Hey everyone, Nick O'Malley here with Andrew Callahan at day 2 of minicamp at Gillette Stadium. Second day where we saw the entire team assembled. Tom Brady there in person, in the flesh. No Rob Gronkowski, but a lot of new faces. What stood out for you today?
Yeah, no Rob Gronkowski. Don't expect that anytime soon. But for me, it was the people who were going to try to replace Rob Gronkowski. And I don't just mean the tight ends. Spoke with Steven Anderson and Matt Lacoste, who were in the mix with Ben Watson to see those snaps. But also Maurice Harris, who's a receiver they brought in the second day of free agency, much like Lacoste. 6'3". He's a bigger wideout where you're going to have those throws that Brady made all the time, right? To Gronk that were high and away to the sideline, back of the end zone. And Maurice Harris was the player of the day today. I mean, he caught everything thrown his way. Brady made him the recipient of his first 3 completions when they're doing these 11-on-11s, being full offense versus full defense. And he stood out, not only just because he was so steady, but Maurice Harris, again, at 6'3", played inside the slot and outside. So, again, it's early. You cushion all this. But for a guy who's trying to make an impact on a team and has that opportunity with so many question marks at receiver, Maurice Harris took a good step today.
Yeah, the Patriots tend to have a lot of guys that go in as underrated signings and end up coming, when you look back in retrospect, go, oh, that was actually a really good signing. Maurice Harris has the potential to be that sort of guy. But a lot of the attention has been placed on the rookies, and now N'Keal Harry has been the focus for a lot of attention on the receiver corps so far. He had a good day yesterday. I didn't get to see him as much as I want to today. How did he do today?
Yeah, I'd say it's more the same. Kind of a so-so mini camp so far for N'Keal Harry, which you always, again, look that it's just non-padded practice. You take everything with a grain of salt. But he saw a lot of Stephon Gilmore today. No one is going to have a great day if you're a receiver going opposite Stephon Gilmore. The positives are that he worked on the side with Brady. We call these kind of Brady circle of trust sessions in which he'll have a pitch and catch when they're working on special teams. So he's out there with James White being Brady, N'Keal Harry, and Ben Watson. Again, guys who generally don't play special teams. So extra work with Brady is always good. Not having a catch in 11-on-11s for the entire day is not. But he did have one play in the back of the end zone I wrote up and mentioned in my recap that, if you counted it as a touchdown and he made a lost it going to the ground, that was the play of the day. But overall, N'Keal Harry, he looked like a rookie today.
Yeah, and we're really breaking down how players did today. But Bill Belichick really stressed that this is not something where he's evaluating players. The past 2 days, he's gotten a lot of questions. Oh, what'd you think of this guy? What'd you think of this guy? He's basically said every time, there's 90 guys out there, I can't evaluate everyone. And he stressed that this is a learning camp. Evaluation comes in training camp. And so how do you factor that in when you see, how's a guy doing in acclimating with the Patriots and then trying to also bounce out, it's a non-padded practice in June?
Yeah, 2 things come to mind about that. One of which we hit upon yesterday was this idea of trends, where in any given day something happens, okay, it's notable, but only if you see it again, today and the next day, and it becomes a trend. And I think, along those lines, Joe Thuney playing left tackle again today is among those things where he might be a backup Isaiah Wenzel recovering from the torn Achilles. But with respect to teaching versus evaluating, in extreme cases, you can evaluate, right? Like, let's say you're going to some basketball court in your neighborhood or otherwise, and you can watch for 30 seconds or so, or maybe a minute. You know who can play and who can't, right? Like, if you can't drive left, whatever it might be. So in extreme cases here, players performing exceptionally well or really falling behind, you take note of that and give it, forget to take it with a grain of salt. And in those cases, Dontrell Inman, we just talked about wide receivers. He's a veteran who signed late. He seems like he's fallen way behind. He was not even lining up with the second-team offense here today. He was supplanted by Jacoby Myers, an undrafted free agent, a guy that many of us like coming out and might make the team. So you look at those cases, who's performing very well. A year ago was J.C. Jackson, who was their starting cornerback late in the postseason. Years ago was Malcolm Butler. Does that continue? So that's how I look at it. There's nothing, you don't sit there and go, there's nothing to be taken from this. Obviously there is, and the coaches know that better than anyone. If someone's having a very good minicamp, it's a good sign. If they're not, that portends pretty badly.
Yeah, you mentioned Jacoby Myers. There's also Ryan Davis among undrafted players. That's something I'm going to be focusing on a little later in the week. And undrafted players kind of have a soft spot in New England because there's a long track record of
16 years in a row.
Yeah. And so Jacoby Myers, Ryan Davis, there's a lot of undrafted guys that could be in the mix. I talked to Jarrett Stidham today. It's interesting to look because Stidham played with Ryan Davis, an undrafted free agent. Ryan Davis is the all-time leader in receptions at Auburn. And Stidham told me that it's been really kind of comforting to come into a new environment and boom, hey, you have a receiver you already have chemistry with, having those same sort of reps. And so that's something I've been watching so far.
Yeah, Ryan Davis is really quick. I mean, we talk about receivers that we have so much here now, and we did a lot yesterday. He's a guy who could figure into that mix. He's a little bit smaller, so he could probably play the slot, and would probably have to make an impact on special teams. But again, with his physical traits and what he did at Auburn, which is basically everything. We know how much versatility is valued here in New England. He's a guy who I would put in that mix, along with Andrew Beck, who's a tight end from Texas. You're only down to 4 tight ends right now with Austin Sperry-Jenkins being released. Jacoby Myers is in that mix. And Terez Hall, linebacker. If you're looking at undrafted guys and trying to keep a name in your mind come training camp for who might make the team and keep the streak going, those are probably the 4 I would say to watch.
Yeah, especially with the lack of experience at the wide receiver position. The 2 guys who had catches last year with the Patriots, Edelman and Dorsett, coming back. And after that, Maurice Harris looks good, and it's crazy at that position.
Yeah, N'Keal Harry's obviously going to factor in, and they're counting on him. Edelman said as much today. He goes, we're going to need him to play well, and hopefully he'll be able to help us. But Braxton Berrios, you don't want to forget about him. Had a very, very good day yesterday. I named him as the player of the day. It wasn't bad today, but it was just, a step below what he performed on Tuesday. We talked about Jacoby Myers and Maurice Harris. So Edelman and Dorsett are firmly entrenched as his top 2 players there. They've taken all the first-team reps. Beyond that, Harris has been the 3rd guy to step in, but we won't really know until the pads are on and we've had a couple weeks here of practice, because Harris is a guy who's, again, more athletic. He doesn't bring a lot of physicality to his game, so the advantages he have now might be negated when his weaknesses are trotted out in July and August. But, there are a bunch of guys who are going to factor in.
You talked about trends. Do you think that how long would Harris and Maurice Harris and Berrios need to trend well for you to start getting on their bandwagons?
Yeah, I'd say a couple of games. I mean, they're going to be on the road to start the preseason and then come back in weeks 3 and 4 here against the Panthers. We all know that week 4, is kind of a throwaway game. Week 3 is a real dress rehearsal, as they call it, for the regular season. But, before that, when they're at Detroit and at Tennessee, they're going to have joint practices, which is a lot of extra reps against quality players you're not as familiar with, where you're not just kind of in these dog days of training camp. So if they perform well through those 2 games, which means all those joint practices and then again seeing those players in competition, on weeks 1 and 2, and they're still thriving, that's a really good sign to me. Because also, this is a small minor thing, but they're going to have, I think, just 5 days to go from week 2 to week 3. So that dress rehearsal is really not going to be akin to anything they're going to see in the regular season, because you at minimum have 6 days to prepare, except for 1 week during the regular season. So I wouldn't expect to see the starters get a ton of run there in week 3. And again, if Berrios and Harris are performing well in the first half of the preseason, I think it'd be safe to make them a lot.
All right, tomorrow, day 3 of minicamp. Last time we see the team gathered like this until training, end of July. Who's one player you haven't got a real chance to zero in on that you want to focus on tomorrow?
It's a good question. I think Jamie Collins probably. I mean, I've written this, multiple times now here. He's been a fixture with the first-team defense. He's been in there along with Ron Bentley, and there's a lot of rotation. We just talked about this at teaching camp. It's just 3 days of practice here in June. But he's a guy that clearly has earned back the trust of the coaching staff, has familiarity with the playbook from when he was here before he got traded in 2014. So what are they going to do without him? Not sure, or except 2016. But, for now, he's done enough, and I think that's a big sign for him. But you've got to make plays. So will he make some more tomorrow? We'll have to wait and find out.
All right, we'll find out then. Folks, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow, last day of training camp, and we'll talk to you then.
See you guys.